Rachel Qualls. I currently run a company called Venture 360. So we have a software platform in the market today that helps venture capital organizations and angel groups keep track of who they're taking money from and the companies that they're investing it into. One of the things that I'm really excited to talk about tonight is the new products that we're launching into the market, and that product is called Liquify. So I'll tell you a lot more about it later when I get more time. But Liquify basically is a private custom market for companies to build on blockchain and trade their securities. So.
Tell us about Perfect Cube.
Hi, I'm Jim Sarsova. Perfect Cube is actually a data analytics company for food-based retail. So most of you are probably thinking, why am I sitting on a panel for Fintech? I actually have quite a history in Fintech in Kansas City. I started my career in financial services and actually had another company called Intelligent Consulting, which we started in 2000 prior to there being a startup ecosystem really in Kansas City, and ended up selling to Charles Schwab. So, and then I'm currently now involved, one of my actual former employees is working on a new Fintech, and I'm actually consulting and working with them to get that started, even though we're not quite ready to launch or announce, but so I've still been actively involved in the Fintech space.
Yeah, Matt, tell us about Bloom.
Awesome. My name is Matt Bergner. I'm the CEO of Bloom. We are a flower shop. We get that all the time. We are not a flower shop, but no, we are. So I'm not a co-founder. I'm the CEO. But we were started. We have a lofty mission to try to provide, to be that first financial advisor to the masses who either don't qualify, can't afford, or aren't interested in sort of the traditional financial advice model. And so we're starting that through trying to help you manage your 401k, 403b, 457, TSP, any of those employer-sponsored plans. So we've been around for 5 years now, and we're currently managing roughly $2.8 billion worth of employees' retirement accounts and growing. So I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you, Matt. Well, Jim, to you, before you tell us more about Perfect Cube and that origin story, tell us about what launched you into Fintech.
So as I said, I actually started my career. I was actually a financial advisor, worked for a broker-dealer, worked on a trade desk and everything else. And when I decided to get into Fintech, we talk about that origin story, identifying a product. We actually more identified a market. I had actually approached my partner, who's hiding in the back of the room, Mark, and said, I'm looking at this space and there's this whole independent channel that's really underserved. And so we started a market and then had no idea what. We called ourselves a consulting company. We did consulting. If you really look at our origin history, we did whatever you do. We were a bootstrap company to make money. We built websites. We did document imaging. We did, the first time I actually nationally spoke at a conference in Fintech was on CRM software. 2 years later, people had no idea we did anything with CRM software, but we did what it took. And then ultimately, we had a couple clients approach us and said, you guys, you've been helping us. We were doing a lot of training on software. You're helping us train with portfolio reporting software. Why don't you just take it over for us? And we thought, we could probably do that. And that ended up being the idea that really stuck for us. And as an encouragement as you're going in, when we did that at the time, Charles Schwab was actually starting a pilot program to do exactly what we're doing. So we had some people say, crazy, why you can be against Schwab? They're going to take this over. And we're like, well, there are clients that are wanting it. So about after 6 months of that, Charles Schwab closed their pilot program. 10 of their 10 customers they had on it, 8 of them ended up coming onto our service. We took off. 4 years later, they came back and said, we really want to get in this space. We don't want to try to build it. We'd like to buy you.
This is 2008, right?
This would be 2008, yeah.
Right.
And then we had a long non-compete, so we thought, well, what else should we do? Open a couple gelato shops and decided we wanted to do retail data analytics. So we and really for the gelato, I really actually did have a passion for gelato, really liked it. I wanted to learn retail analytics and understand that, so we thought that would be an interesting space to move into and do that, and we thought, what better way, it was about the same cost of, a university degree. So we thought, out of our pocket, that makes sense. Good way to educate ourselves and move into the space.
Great. Well, Rachel, last time I talked to you, it was probably about a year and a half ago. It seems like a lot has changed potentially for Venture 360. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on now with Liquify?
Sure. Do you want me to kind of go into the evolution?
Yeah,
of
that'd be
here?
fantastic. Yeah.
So I started as a stockbroker too.
Wow.
And then sort of like, nope.
That's why we
But so I started out in financial services in the public markets, and I realized that some real money was being made in private equity. And I also realized there were lots and lots of companies and innovation that wasn't getting to market. And one of the main reasons that innovation wasn't getting to market was the bottleneck of capital. And so I said, like on a Tuesday night, I'll be a venture capitalist, right? That seemed easy. It was not. Nobody would hire me. So as an entrepreneur, as we all are, I started my own firm. And because I didn't know anything about investing in private equity, I went out to a bunch of high net worth, really successful businessmen in Nashville, which is where I moved here from. And I said, look, I won't charge you guys anything, but I'm gonna go find some deals. And if you think they're good enough to invest in, maybe we could start like a network, right? And we did. And that became many angel networks. And that then became many venture funds. And that grew and grew over the course of 8 years. And over the course of that 8 years, I didn't feel like I was really solving the problem of helping get more information or more innovation out to market. So after talking to angel investors for that long about, look, what's it gonna take to get more people like you interested in this space? And the answer might surprise you, as it did me, but the answer was not, it's a really risky proposition. These are really successful business people, they can mitigate for risk. The number one reason that 0.08% of the potential investors actually invest in private equity is lack of liquidity. Their money is tied up for 7 to 10 years. So think about that. If you went to your stockbroker tomorrow and you're like, here's my money, and he's like, cool man, you'll get it in a decade, you'd be like, thanks, right? So this is the problem. And this is the problem that I set out to solve with Venture 360's lack of liquidity. Like once you put your money in something, how are you gonna get it out? And so we said, look, we're not gonna start with the market. Like how about we build software that addresses how companies are bought, how they're invested in. And so that's what Venture 360 is today. And as I was building this sort of hypothesis, I was half right, which means I was all wrong. And what I was half right about is I was like, look, we'll build all of the investors and then all the companies will come, we'll manage billions. We do, we manage 5 billion. But here's where I was wrong. I thought that we could then spin up an exchange and that private companies would want to list on it and they'd want to trade their securities. So I go out to all my friends and I was like, we're going to do this thing, y'all, it's going to be awesome. And they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And I said, why not? Like, why wouldn't you list on an exchange? Your investors need liquidity, your founders, you have all this money tied up in your companies. And they said, look, we want to control it. I don't want just anyone owning my company. I have to report to them. They have voting rights. Like, it's not going to happen. And so we switched and we said, we're not going to launch an exchange. We're going to build you tools for you to build whatever market you want. And that's what we launched on July 1st of this year in Liquify, is that any company can build any market they want. Blockchain, as I'm going to throw a bunch of fancy words at you like they matter, but really it's more the how and not the why. But that's the evolution of Venture 360 and Liquify.
That's great. Great. Matt, can you tell us a little bit about the origin story of Bloom?
Yes, so I was in the garage. No, I was not. So 3 guys founded Bloom, and 2 of them were financial advisors, and 1 of them was their tech friend, so Chris, Kevin, and Randy. And it's part of the reason why I joined Bloom, why I moved my family from Dallas up to Kansas City, was that these guys were very successful, built a traditional financial advisory firm in town, and at some point something clicked where they realized that their own parents wouldn't qualify for the services they were providing to high net worth individuals. And instead of just saying, oh, that's too bad, they actually met every night trying to figure out a way to do that in a scalable way. And thanks to a lot of hard work and time, they were able to figure out that the essence of helping most people was through their retirement account, which today, most of that in a non-pension world is that employer-sponsored account like a 401k. So they just figured out a way to hook into virtually any 401k, and their goal was not to beat the market. It was just the feeling that everyone deserves the right to earn market rates of return. And so if they could just build something simple, really simple, because they knew that people, the last thing that any of you probably want to do is mess with your 401k, or even think about your 401k, is they knew they had about 5 minutes of your time. And so if they could make it really easy for you to just say, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't really want to know what I'm doing, and I'm probably messing it up, will you just fix it for me? And will you do it in a way that I know there's no ulterior motive here? You're not trying to get rich quick, you're not making money in any other way other than a nominal, flat, monthly fee. And that's basically how they started. Friends and Family grew into thousands, and they've had a really great relationship with the Kansas City market. And ultimately, that has powered the success that Bloom has had over the years, is just building that sort of foundation locally. So that's really what it is.
So where is the confusion with the floral shop come in?
That's our fallback plan. If this doesn't work out, we're selling flowers. As the former marketer guy, they need a better explanation of how they came up with Bloom. But the truth is, I think they just look for something relatively simple and straightforward. I think the way we would just think about it now, in hindsight, is it's just about growing. It's about the idea of growing something over time, and everybody likes that. And so I think that's ultimately what they did. And my new CMO, who's much better than me, I think really loves the idea of it being different and sort of bucking the trend is another way to suggest that there is a different way to do things. And so I think we've kind of just stuck with that.
Great. Well, Jim, I wanted to start with you on this question. Kansas City has a rich history in fintech. What are your thoughts about Kansas City being a fintech hub? Do you think we are?
Which I'll answer. I'm going to add a tidbit since Kevin and Chris aren't here to defend it. Talking about the small world of Kansas City, actually, Kevin and Chris were actually a client of ours at Intelligence. So they actually saw us grow up as a company from really the inside and then sell to a bigger company. So we may have been a seed of their inspiration jumping in. I like Kansas City as a fintech company. Fintech City, and I would say the biggest driver is we really do have a lot. And there's companies, a lot of people in the city have never even heard of DST because they don't do a lot of advertising stuff. They are just a massive company in the financial services industry. State Street has a big presence in here, obviously American Century, Waddell and Reed. You start looking at the companies, and for us, when we were building a fintech company, hardest thing was finding talent and stuff. And so to find, and we found just rich sources of people that knew the financial, they didn't understand what we were doing, but they knew the financial services and everything else and was really able to feed into them. And that's a huge factor. I mean, because, our company, as I said, Mark and I started it, but we were nothing without, the 50 employees that we ended up hiring. That development, that's what really built us up as a company. And Kansas City provided us a good opportunity for that. We have challenges. I mean, as I said, I know there's an article refuting Zach a little bit, talking about some of the tech help, and we hire it, and there's a tech shortage. I think that's probably true in a lot of cities. There's not as much money flowing as we would all like to see flowing. That's also probably true of a lot of companies. I mean, so there's definitely areas to grow and areas to improve, but I do think of all the industries, if you look at financial technology, ag, and medical, I think those are the three areas that Kansas City probably has the best chance of supporting.
That's great. Yeah, Rachel, any thoughts to add on that? Or Matt?
Yeah. The only thing I'd say just no. I'd just take a different angle and say that I feel like financial services in general, trying to start something in financial services is clearly about trust and credibility. And I have been humbled by a lot of the folks much younger than me that work at Bloom who have shown sort of a focus around trying to do something meaningful to help others, being humble about that and our successes, and really putting that client first. And I think that's something having never lived in the Midwest besides my time here, never really probably being in the Midwest besides living here now, is I feel like that's a cultural thing that I don't think it's just a Bloom thing. I think that's just something that people, they just have a different perspective, frankly, and it's refreshing, and I'm glad I'm raising my kids here now, honestly, about that. And I think that serves financial services tremendously going forward because, there's a lot of question and concern about ulterior motives. Why are you really doing this? And I don't have employees sitting around trying to figure out what the exit is going to be and how much money they're making. They're more interested in, are we going to survive because we have 21,000 plus clients who are counting on us, and I gave up a lot to be here. I want to make sure this is a success, and that is very fulfilling, and I think our clients see that every day. And I think that is the differentiator for Kansas City going forward when the other coasts may have different motives. I think people are questioning about that. So to me, that is what it gives promise to me is if we're successful, the others are successful, then that could kind of build off of that.
So title of the event is Future of Fintech. So I want to ask each of you some questions about trends in fintech and So Jim, if we could start with you, what are you seeing as some trends in fintech that might influence the behavior of consumers and businesses?
From a technology standpoint?
Yeah, anything.
Rachel's already brought it up, blockchain. I mean, you look, I read an article on artificial intelligence, machine learning, talking about, white collar workers, your jobs are on the line, and the first industry they targeted was financial services. And so I think, and in my opinion, AI, machine learning, blockchain are going to disrupt a lot of industries, and they are going to disrupt financial services.
In what way?
tremendously. Well, as I said, I mean, and there's been talk of, Bloom in theory is a robo-advisor. You aren't talking to a real person. You have machines that are calculating, doing that and everything else, which is why they can do it more affordable and serve that and everything else. Now with that said, and I think you're going to see that disruption coming through. But, as he also brought up too, financial services is one that involves a lot of trust and everything else. My personal opinion is I think whoever really can merge the human interaction with the machine interaction in financial services is going to probably have the biggest impact across the board. Blockchain, and I'll let Rachel, as I said, we've been looking at blockchain more from the outside than actually getting our hands dirty on it yet. But blockchain, I think, will just disrupt it. The way, and people get tied up on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, which I was going to point
Cut
out.
off.
Yeah,
Said
cut off.
blockchain. Everyone's like, come on.
Okay, I talk too much clearly, so you kill the battery on the mic. So, and I think what it will do, it just changes how everything, from the application process to answer this. Why am I talking
I
about
was
it?
gonna-
Go.
like,
I'm gonna let you.
I could just sit here and act like I know
And then you'll
everything.
say, Come on. I will pass it off. I'll let you finish that.
Blockchain thought?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna nerd out on y'all. I could, but I'm not gonna, because we didn't drink enough tonight. I'm gonna nerd out on y'all. The reason that blockchain is so exciting, other than it's like the sexiest piece of code I've ever seen. I've been a long time investor in Bitcoin. And the reason is because of the societal implications of something like a decentralized banking system. But again, not enough beer for that tonight either. But the reason that blockchain is applicable to something when we're talking about trading private securities. So again, forget the public markets that have a thing or two figured out, okay? These are private markets, don't actually exist yet. And if we have that to build again, how do we use something like blockchain, which is a completely secure, decentralized transaction of record, and you can start to trade that. And that's what we've built. So we used a network called Stellar that all of one of you maybe have heard of. No, zero. Nobody. Okay, this is good. It's good time. Thanks, man. Thanks. Okay, we got you. Sarah works for me, but whatever. So we're using a network called Stellar, and it basically works like a ledger. So I'm trying to explain why it's so important. So instead of us building really complex database structures and security infrastructure, we can use a decentralized ledger to trade these securities that we're tokenizing, which is just fancy code, right? It's a fancy electronic share that we're trading. And then we have a partnership with Coinbase, so you'll be able to trade Bitcoin and buy some Bloom. I'm a big fangirl for some Bloom. But see, the thing is, and the reason that a private market like this is applicable is that Matt doesn't have time to deal with some low angel like me, right, when you're growing up to raise money. So,
I'll take it.
but being able to go to Bloom's website and get in on that because they have this secondary market that they're running alongside the capital they're raising, that's kind of what we're building and introducing into the market. I feel like I got long with it, I'm sorry.
It's all good. It's all good.
I was going to say, the fact that you called code sexy means you've already nerded out.
Matt, what are some trends you see?
I just like that it's sort of evening the playing field for the general population of access to stuff that typically either cost money or had exorbitant fees, and so you see it across the overall robo space, or even I just look at the things I like. I still just like looking at my credit score and Credit Karma, and I like that I can do that without having some sort of monthly subscription that I have to call an 800 number to cancel. It's simple stuff sometimes, or a current, there's a debit card for kids, and it's a way for me to stop letting my older daughter, scheme my wife's debit card for the shipping or whatever that's more than the gift card that she got for whatever. And it's just these little things that are helping everybody kind of make life a little easier versus something dramatic. I mean, it's really, if you think about our day, we don't have much time in the day. So anything that can just make it a little easier and a little more cost effective is sometimes the best stuff.
Great. Well, how can Kansas City better support the fintech community? I don't know, Jim, if you want to start this off. You mentioned some challenges.
I think fintech is the same as virtually any startup. I mean, and as I said, I come from the experience of in 2000 there was basically no startup ecosystem in Kansas City. I mean, so we went to Johnson County's Small Business Development Center, and the ECJC was kind of getting going and everything else there, so starting to see it. So I do think that that support of the community is a big thing. As we said, it's my answer is probably most of the standards. It's obviously more money flowing in, especially on the early stages of it when it's really can be difficult to get money. But more than that is really helping people with the ideas kind of see them and take them forward and do that.
Yeah. Any barriers that you see?
I don't. I'm so happy to be here, y'all. I have felt nothing but, for the most part, completely supported, and anytime I've asked for help, Kansas City's given it to me. So I guess that maybe I'm on the other end of feeling really, really grateful to be here and have the support of the community that I do. I think if you've never, I suggest you move somewhere else and come back, is where I'm at. Because that's what I did. And so I don't have a whole lot to complain about. I think at this point in my career in life, I'm just grateful to be here with you guys and to have the support to get here to be with you guys. So.
Great.
I should call out some of the, we have received funding from Digital Sandbox. We were a Launch KC winner. So, I mean, there are great programs in Kansas City that I would be remiss not to bring up.
The one thing we talk about all the time that I feel like somebody's got to solve for this is just that I feel like people who've lived here, so my wife and I observed that generationally people move back here. They grew up here, then they went off to school somewhere else, maybe had their first job somewhere else, but ultimately they had in their mind this idea that I'm coming back here to raise my kids, right? I don't know when or what, but I'm going to come back there. And they're as the former marketing guy, who's the easiest people to go after to try to have them come back and work here are people who already know. You don't have to sell them on how great it is. The issue that we find is that who do we use for trying to figure out who is from here is like LinkedIn. And LinkedIn only covers you for college. So if you went to KU or K-State or whatever, great. But I struggle with figuring out how we can build a network that sort of is even at the high school level to really understand the folks who ultimately, if they knew that there were opportunities, excuses, if you will, to move back here, I find that we struggle with just connecting the dots on finding those people who are looking for a reason to move back, and we're kind of sort of grasping at straws to indirectly find those people. So that's just a tangible thing, because that is the future is growth, and we need more people, and I think those are people who don't need to be sold on the benefits of moving back.
Well, we have time for about 2 questions from the audience, so anybody have any questions for a chance? Right here.
What skill set do you want to repatriate from other cities and come back?
It doesn't really matter, but so what kind of skills specifically are we looking for? I mean, I think it's one of those things that typically, if it's tech, it tends to be the most specific, either a programming language or some experience with a certain app or platform or what have you. I mean, those tend to be the first, but ultimately in the end it doesn't even matter. It's just, we just want to find the best people we can, and so depending on what month it is and what's going on, you just may get a lot of great candidates or you may not. And so it just, historically for me, I've hired across the country for whatever companies I've been hiring for, and so I think it doesn't really matter. It's just about that they know that this is Bloom actually exists, or there's startups that exist in Kansas City.
One more question. Yeah, right here.
Question for Rachel, with the Liquify product and the private equity that you're dealing with. I'm not an expert in this space, I'm just curious.
Me either, so it's okay.
Have there been recent developments that help you with the SEC qualified investor requirements?
And it seems like with things like the Jobs Act, we take a step forward and 2 steps back. So there's lots of lessened regulation as it relates to raising money from what are called non-accredited investors. Fancy word for rich, okay? So being able to raise money from non-accredited investors is possible, but the hurdles that you have to go through to do that make it almost not worth it. So I think that we're getting there, and I think that one of the big things that the SEC is worried about is one, complying with investor laws. Like Liquify is fully SEC compliant, so you need to know who you're taking money from, entrepreneurs, okay? It's a big deal. Like you could go to jail, so you need to know. And these are things that are like called KYC, which is Know Your Customer, and AML, anti-money laundering, okay? Which our platform has built into it to make it easy, like Matt's talking about. And this isn't just for venture-backed companies. Like if you're starting a restaurant, you know the best way to capitalize a restaurant, your community. And so things like this is what we're really hoping to bring to the market, is make it easier to raise capital, get more people off the sidelines and interested in private equity, and then give them ways to get out so that you don't have money tied up forever. But anyway, long-winded answer to the SEC is getting there, but it's very, very slow in baby steps to the day, which is my dream, that it doesn't matter if you're rich or not, you should be able to invest in whatever you want. You can lose your money like the rest of us, okay? But anyway, so that's my dream, but we're not quite there yet.
Thank you. Rachel, Jim, Matt, thank you so much for your
Thank
time. Really appreciate it.